Hi, everyone. It's Kate Kay back with another fireside chat. We are super fortunate to be joined today by our very own Catalina from Task Force Diablo. We're going to be talking a little bit about moral injury. So thank you for joining us, Catalina. For those of us who don't know you, do you want to offer like a little bit of an introduction?
Sure. I'm Catalina Gasper. I retired from the Navy after 24 years of active duty service in this past December 2021. And I've been working to try to help our Afghan allies relocate out of Afghanistan since the fall of Kabul in August 2021. And before that, I was helping some Afghan SIV applicants that I served with on their applications.
Also one of our favorite AfghanEvac members for sure. The thing that we wanted to talk about today is moral injury. And the reason I wanted to do a fireside chat on this is because I find that it is a really prevalent topic affecting the mental health of our volunteers, and that not a lot of people who are involved in these efforts really understand what it is. So just to start off, I was going to ask you what you think moral injury is. And I'll start by saying that in talking to a couple of providers, it's not actually that complicated. It's really just like exposure to an event that sort of contradicts your own understanding of morality, right? So it's something that you can be personally involved in. It's something that you can just have exposure to just by nature of being in the service. So that's always how I've kind of defined it. I'm curious if you have a different definition.
No, I think that that's spot on. And really, moral injury is something, unfortunately, that a lot of people, and not that it's exclusively owned by people that by veterans or active duty or people that have served in the military, but people that have served in the military, unfortunately, are exposed quite often to moral injury. And I would say that quite often it has to do with the feeling of friendly fire by your own leadership or your own organization or the institution in which you serve, because you feel as though you should be supported in some way, and the outcome is not what you expect. And this what's happened in Afghanistan is the prime example of a moral injury to the extreme, for sure.
That was actually a really elegant way for you to phrase it. I think people are really going to understand how to relate to that a little bit better. Before we talk about the actual military withdrawal in 2021, I was wondering if you wanted to just share a little bit about what your service was like, so people can understand like how connected you are to that part of your identity and that part of your history.
Yeah. So I joined the Navy when I was in college, and I went to OCS. My commissioning source was OCS. I was an information warfare officer at first, and then later on I became intelligence. I was in Afghanistan in 2008 with Task Force there, with the SEALs. And then again, I served in Afghanistan as the chief operation of a DoD platform in 2018 and 2019. While I was there, as I was the supervisor of 65 local nationals who were SIV eligible applicants. So the fact that we were in a compound that was outside the green zone, fully enclosed unit unto itself, our security was fully provided by those local nationals. So we were quite reliant on each other, and we're quite a close-knit group. And so that's really my exposure to specifically this mission. And Afghanistan and my participation in the war of Afghanistan, my part in it, changed me in ways that are irreversible, right? It has given me so much, and it has also taken so much from me, that I'll never be the same. So this is my continuation of my mission there.
I think you touched on something important that non-military members sort of struggle to understand, which is this attachment we have to our Afghan allies. You know, from their perspective, they're thinking, well, where is this relationship even coming from? Like, we were there to assist. And I think, at least when I speak to veterans and people who are active duty, those relationships are really paramount to your experience of service. Like, I hear US military members refer to our allies as, you know, their brothers and sisters. And you guys really mean that. These are really meaningful relationships to you, beyond just like, this is not just a coworker. This is not just somebody who you would run into. Like, these people were family. Is that a good representation of how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They guarded me while I slept. We don't have, it's not like we had, I didn't have US service members on those walls. Those were Tajik, right? Only them guarded me while I slept. We were in a series of interconnected houses, and they were the ones patrolling that compound, walked outside my room, made sure that we were safe. I mean, they were the ones that cooked our food, that made elaborate presentations, you know, on 4th of July to help us celebrate, you know, and you know, put sort of the random butter sculpture of like the Holy Family in the
Sure.
4th of July presentation and things like that. And made sure that our air conditioning units fixed and our vehicles worked, and did everything, you know, to keep our compound running and to make sure that we were prepared to go out on our missions. It was a complete trust relationship. And so when they reached out to me when Kabul was falling and asked for my help, that's where that moral injury comes from.
Right.
Because it is with those voices have such a bewilderment of, you are the United States government. Why can't you get us out?
Right.
And there is a real feeling to that, and a reciprocal feeling to that. It's sort of like, why can't I get them out?
Yeah.
We are the United States government.
Yeah.
And that's where that injury comes from, because we did make a commitment.
Right.
And in return, we handed them, you know, supervisor letters that didn't work, and HR letters that didn't work, and some arrangement with the embassy that no longer was in existence, that their applications were going to get shepherded through in a timely manner. And there were some organizations and agencies that were working backdoor accesses at the gates to get their people through. And why wasn't our agency able to do the same thing? And it didn't make any sense. And it was so harmful and so frustrating on so many levels. And it was a betrayal that trickled all the way down. And there was no explaining it. There was no excuse except for to just go hat in hand to the people that serve with us and just be like, we failed, right? And for those that I was able to get out at the time, and that I have been able to get out since, the extreme lengths that they have had to go through to help save themselves, the 24 hours at Abbey Gate,
Right.
in which I've had to tell my friend Ferouz, who now lives 10 minutes away, I'm sorry that your daughter has passed out from heat exhaustion, but you are going to have to carry her limp body and push closer and closer to the gate until I can get someone to get you out. And the reality was, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get someone to get him out.
Right.
But I had to just say, trust me, right? Because it's your only chance.
Right.
And all of that is all of that is the moral injury, right? Because it didn't have to be that way.
I think your use of the word betrayal is really important, because I think people don't realize that our service members felt betrayed by our government, right? They're thinking, oh, well, if the government is withdrawing, they must think that that's the best move, and our military is, designed to follow that. But every time I've spoken to someone about moral injury, they feel very betrayed by our government. So it's not just the sense of our Afghan allies feel betrayed, as they should, because we didn't really hold our word that we would support them and help them the way that they had done for us. But that betrayal trickles through to our service members who dedicated their careers and their lives. And, I know that you and I have spoken about, you incurred in service injuries. That's all, in pursuing the mission as you were told. And I think that word betrayal really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's true. And I did. Um, it, the thing is we knew that we were withdrawing, and we began to plan for it. We began to plan for it back in 2018.
Right.
And the staff knew that we were withdrawing, and they would ask us questions. And, those of us at like the tactical level would push up those questions, right? And say, like, what's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? And I know that like our unit, like this is just an example of many, many others that waited to the last minute to come up with a solution that was no solution for these people, right? And I don't want to use this time to go through like what I think a solution should have been, because I think we've all like, done our Monday morning quarterbacking on that. But yeah, right at the emotional level, for me,
Yeah.
I was betrayed, and I'm not going to betray the people I made a commitment to, right? So I was injured in Afghanistan, and I did have to redeploy due to those injuries. And before I left, I told my allies there, I will not forget about you. Not in some sort of nebulous way, but I, touched their hands and looked them in the eye, and I said, I will not forget about you. And I have nine of them out and their families, and there's 65 total.
Okay.
So I will keep working.
More to do.
The job is done. Yeah. Right. And I know that I've helped within this coalition, many, many, many more right handlers and other organizations with their people, and other immigration eligible folks, right, AMSITs and LPRs and whatnot. And I'm happy to keep doing that, because everybody's folks are at different stages of immigration eligibility. But this is my personal commitment, and everybody has their own. And it's just part of me reframing my experience in my participation in the Afghan war, and making it sustainable for myself, right? Because when you have something that has taken so much from you, you can't quantify that. But what I can quantify is what I can give back. And that's what I'll continue to do.
I'm a civilian. And so I came into this work from a really different place than other people with military service. And I remember thinking, well, maybe we just didn't have enough warning to come up with a plan. Like maybe something happened. And the more I sort of engaged with the work, the more it became apparent that like we had warning. We knew that this was happening for years. And so there's not really even that. I think I was trying to make excuses because I wanted to believe that if our military went somewhere and told people that we wouldn't leave them behind, that we wouldn't. And so hearing what the actual timeline was, and there's just sort of, it felt like a really intentional failure almost of both our allies and our service members. So I'm wondering if you feel any differently about your service now because of how things sort of played out.
I mean, I know that a lot of people go there, and I try not to go there because it just, there are a lot of people that I've served with, especially back in 2008 with the strike force, that are not participating in this particular effort for that reason, right? They can't even talk about our war in Afghanistan. They can't even talk about it because they're just so devastated about the way it ended, because they've just lost so many friends, because they've lost so much more than I can even imagine. And they can't even talk about it. And so, although I think about what we were told, and the way those 20 years were chalked up, and how we pulled out and Kabul fell so quickly, and active duty and veterans, and the way that felt to us, just watching Afghanistan being taken back by the Taliban, and the way that felt about all those years of fighting, and all those lives lost, and all those missions. And for me on the intelligence side, all of that intelligence collected, like, what is the point, as we were talking about before, what we were told, like, well, you held the beast back from coming to the homeland. And it's just like, like that's it's just lip service. It feels so empty to all of us. It feels empty, but I'm just not going to peel that onion right now.
Okay, that's right. It's just, watching this and watching people that I really care about, it hurts my heart to see how invalidated military people feel right now because of your commitment and sacrifice. And I notice that some civilians have a tendency to think, well, but you're military, so you sort of sign up to do whatever the government tells you to do, but they're not considering that these are real relationships and real people, and that you gave them your word. This isn't just about your representation of the United States government, it's about your representation of yourself. And I think that that's an important part of this moral injury, because you have now been put in a position where you feel like you can't protect your own integrity, right? Like that's a huge part of this, I think. And I think civilians in particular can be a little too quick to dismiss the impact of that. I know that you had spoken a little bit about your first reaction to that 2021 withdrawal. I'm wondering if you wouldn't go a little bit more into detail just to explain to people who weren't a part of it, like this is what it felt like as someone with a military career to watch how things played out, especially in those first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, so I think what a lot of people don't understand is, so I joined the military before 9/11.
Okay.
But pretty much my entire career, we were at war in Afghanistan. For me, for half my career, it was Afghanistan. For the other half, I did work PACOM. But for a lot of people, it was Afghanistan. It was Afghanistan, it was Iraq. Look what happened in Iraq. Look what happened in Afghanistan. What was it for?
Right.
What was it for?
Right.
And here's the thing, watching what happened in August, I think for a lot of people, it's like Kabul fell, and that's a world away. Not to me,
Right.
not to us. Those are real places.
Right.
There's a Taliban guy sleeping in my bed, using my locker. There's a compound that I built in Mazar Sharif that now belongs to the Taliban. Like, all that infrastructure, all that equipment, all that goodness on the ground, just watching them roll in just like that. And those are real places.
Yeah.
I have walked those streets, and that's not a typical experience for people in the military. I have an atypical experience because of the job I had, but I have walked those streets of Kabul. I know Kabul, and it's heartbreaking. Yeah. And I've eaten in restaurants out in town. It's a real place for me, and it was just like, I didn't expect Kabul to fall so quickly.
Right.
It was shock, it was terror. I was in vacation in Hawaii at the time. It was my retirement vacation.
Okay.
And actually my higher headquarters got a hold of me in a panic because they did not have complete information on all of our SIV applicants there. And they wanted me to pull it all together and send it to them because they were going to get it in a spreadsheet to the State Department. How does that sound familiar? And they were going to do something with it. So I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And and then they just kept off asking me for more and more versions, So in the beginning, my work was unofficial, but sanctioned by my higher headquarters. I was still active duty. And then about the 25th of August, I was shut down by my headquarters, given a direct order to cease and desist. And I at the time was going to defer my retirement so that I could do some additional, basically do like some additional therapies, like an inpatient treatment for my traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
And I had to cancel that and accelerate my retirement timeframe so that I could avoid basically violating a direct order.
Right.
Um,
We'll just gloss
and,
over that part. That's fine.
and continue work. And continue work on this mission.
Catalina, I know that it's so hard to try to put everything into like a 20-30 minute fireside chat.
Yeah.
And we are, we're just about out of time. So I just want to thank you, because I think you did a really beautiful job at explaining to people what this has meant to individuals who are really committed to the mission, which is to our allies and to our service members. And that moral injury comes in because we're not doing right by the people we're supposed to, right? Like I don't love that argument of, well, do we really have an ethical obligation to go back for these people? And everyone who has ever served, anyone who has served, to me, has said yes. And I think that it's important that people understand why this matters so much. So normally I close out a fireside chat by saying, if you could leave your viewers with just one thing, like one piece of information or one thought, what would it be?
So, I got several families out in Abbey Gate, but one family in particular that worked with me on the compound, Farouz and Uma, they're cousins. They both worked at the compound together. Uma got her mom out. The oldest woman that's known to have gotten out of Abbey Gate. It was Uma, her mom, her sister, and her teenage son, Farouz, his wife, his two daughters, and their 6-month-old baby. So there's only one full-grown man in the group. All of their male cousins, the Hazaras, all of their male cousins came down for those 24 hours, and they created a circle around them, and they guarded them through the night so that the children and the women wouldn't get crushed. And then when I finally got someone to pull them from the crowd, the male cousins, they carried the women and the children across the ditch and the old lady, so they could get out. And then they went back, and they're still there in Kabul. And one of those little girls, her name is Satura. I coach her now. She's on my son's soccer team.
Oh,
Yeah.
Catalina, I don't think there's anything that I can add of value to this conversation other than thank you. I know it's really hard to talk about, but I think it matters to people to hear how this feels, especially to people who served. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording. Okay.
Okay.